Alright everybody, this video we're going to walk through paper 2. So if you go to our Blackboard course, here's paper 2 analysis and synthesis. I'm going to pull up the assignment sheet and walk us through it here. Alright, here we go. So paper 2, analysis and synthesis. This is due Tuesday, December 5th on Blackboard. You know, this class is short, so everything's a little pressed together here. Same format as the first paper, Times New Roman, font size 12, MLA, double space. This paper is worth 200 points and will be based on, it should say 6 areas there, not 5. So it's the same setup as the first paper, except now you're talking about at least 2 texts. That could be, one of them must be a poem. And it's a page longer because you're talking about another text here. So introduction and thesis worth 50, body paragraphs that follow meal guidelines, main idea, evidence, which is the quote, analysis of the quote and link, that's 35. You got to include a quote from the poem or story in each body paragraph. That's worth big money there. Conclusions, talking about 2 texts, one must be a poem, right? One must be a poem. Adherence to formatting MLA guidelines. For this assignment, you will write a 3 to 4 page analysis and synthesis of 2 to 3 of the texts we have read. This could include 1 short story and 1 to 2 poems we have talked about. The guidelines, you must write about at least 1 poem, and you can't write about the same text from your first paper. So if you did your first paper on saving sortie, you can't do paper 2 on saving sortie. Synthesis is just a fancier word where you're just bringing in 2 texts together and talking about them with each other. This occurs when you bring in 2 texts, 2 or more texts. These sources talk to, with, against each other. Synthesis enables more complexity and greater range of reference in the writer's analysis. To analyze, like in our first paper, means to show the relationship of the parts of a text being examined and how those relationships work with the meanings you write about. Structure, see first paper handout. What not to do, see first paper handout. So the paper topics, think about the themes we have been discussing over the past few weeks. Ask yourself this question: in what text do some of our themes seem prevalent? Think about how we have been discussing ideas of work, the American dream, the relationships between families, the relationships between parents and children. Think about different encounters characters experience regarding race, gender, economics. Think about the role of memory and how it haunts individuals. Another theme I want to bring into play is the notion of trauma. Defined in the Oxford English Dictionary as a deeply disturbing or distressing experience, an emotional shock following a stressful event. So I have just a list of things. Some of these texts we haven't read. Like we haven't read these first 2, but you can really choose anything that kind of works together. So for number 1, you have a list of texts here, and you could jam in any text we've read. Here's what you'll answer though. Examine certain individuals' relationships with work and or time in these texts. How does time and work shape identity? Or how an individual's identities formed, how are they formed or shaped in these texts? What is the role of work in each text? How does work define individuals and their relationship with the world? Who has the biggest influence on the characters and their relationship with work? Think about the literal, physical idea of work, and also the emotional, psychological forms of work. Answer 1 to 2 of these questions. I think, think of Romero. Romero's shirt would work really well, and also Rigoberto Gonzalez's casa. That house is working against how we normally view a house. How does it frustrate how we normally view a house? You can think of Romero and Romero's shirt, and the poem that works really well with Romero's shirt. So Romero's shirt obviously is the short story. Romero's shirt and those winter Sundays. That poem, Sundays too, my father got up early. That would be a great paper about work, right? So think about how, and here's just a bunch of poems and short stories as well, and you could jam in any ones you want. And you're not restricted to these. If another poem or short story fits this that aren't on here, you can use that. How is the American dream portrayed and experienced? You remember, what is the real America Nia talks about? Is there such a thing? What are the experiences of these characters that illustrate the real America? How do they deal with these things? How does race impact the view of the American dream? How does it make it different? Answer 1 to 2 of these questions. Here are a list of texts. This might work really well. How does trauma manifest and infuse the lives of the individuals within these texts? In what similar and or different ways has war shaped and changed the characters in these texts? How is war viewed and remembered? How does war haunt individuals? I think 2 poems that work really well for this question: facing it, right? My black face fades, hiding inside the black granite. I said I wouldn't, damn it. So we have the African American Vietnam veteran going to the wall and reflecting on his experiences, and the lost pilot. Remember, the speaker of that poem lost his father in the war, never met his father, and he's not a veteran. So those are dealing with the after effects of war and trauma. 2 other texts that would work really well, think of the flowers, right? Mayop, when she stumbles across that body, and Song for a Dark Girl, right? Those 2 work really, really well together. We have the brutal, way down south in Dixie, break the heart of me. They hung my black young lover to a crossroads tree. And then the flowers, Mayop finding the dead man who was lynched at the end. Those 2 work really well there. So how is family portrayed? Here's another question 4, and you have a bunch of just different texts here. Throughout, you could look at Lin-Manuel's Frying Trout While Drunk, right? And compare, contrast that with Henri Cole's Oil and Steel, or another poem or story that deals with family. How are the roles of parents and children played or navigated? Do individuals' relationships change or remain the same throughout the text? What are some underlying factors and or themes that characterize or represent these difficult relationships? So family, this one deals with family. What are some poems or story that really looks at family here? 5, how is memory portrayed in these texts? How does memory affect individuals, shaping their lives? How are the individuals haunted by memory? Does memory affect them in a negative or positive way? Are they trapped, or are they able to move on? Answer 1 to 2 of these questions. We're not looking at trifles yet. That's going to be in our final paper, so get rid of trifles. Additional questions. How is race and or the immigrant's experience portrayed in any of the short stories, poems? Remember, for this paper, you must talk about at least 1 poem, and you can't talk about the story that you talked about for your first paper. So here, this might be helpful to set up your paper. So you have your, let's go, MLA format, right? Throughout. Your name, my name, the class, and the due date. When's this thing due? December 4th. So, and remember, your papers, you'll have your last name and page number up in here too. So title, if you want to put a title, War and Memory in Tate's The Lost Pilot and Komunyaka's Facing It. I don't care if you put a title. I don't want you to gnash your teeth over a title, but there is a title. I'm going to walk you through a few different ways how to set up your paper. So your intro, you're going to jump in both James Tate's The Lost Pilot and Komunyaka's Facing It. War haunts the individuals, right? And you're going to spend a little time talking about that. Your intro is going to be about this long, I would say, 1/4 to half a page. And your thesis comes at the end. Answer the question, how do the speakers deal with war and its after effects? you know, the answer will be your thesis, right? So here are a couple of different ways to set up your paper. Body paragraph 1. You could look at facing it. So close read the beginning of facing it, what's going on, situate that, the whole, remember meal guidelines, main idea, evidence, analysis, link. So that could be body 1, facing it. Body 2, you could look at the lost pilot. Similarly, right? The speaker and the lost pilots, lost is fought. You're talking about that main idea, evidence, analysis, link. And then you might go body 3, facing it. Same thing, right? Main idea, evidence. Remember, each body paragraph is going to focus on one thing. Body 4, the lost pilot. So you see you can alternate the poems here. That's one way to do it. Main idea, evidence. Evidence is the quote from the poem, remember. Body 5, both poems together. Tie them both together here, right? What do they both have in common? And then you can move into your conclusion. So that could be one way you set up your paper, right? And there's your paper. That's that. You just fill that in, right? You would have to close read the poem. So you can alternate facing it, body 1, the lost pilot, facing it, the lost pilot, both poems, and the conclusion. So that's option 1 when you're talking about 2 texts. Another option, you could do facing it in body 1. You could do facing it again in body 2. The lost pilot in body 3. The lost pilot in body 4. And then both poems together, body 5, conclusion. So that's another option. And again, another option, you could look at both. If you can look at both facing it and the lost pilot in each body paragraph. Then, though, your body paragraphs are going to be a little longer because you have to quote from each poem. So you could do both. Both, but you probably don't need that 5th paragraph then because you'll be talking about both the poems throughout. So that's a way to set up your paper, and then the conclusion. So those are a few different options. Remember, each body paragraph focuses on one aspect. So facing it, what's going on? What's happening? The speaker in facing it goes to the Vietnam Veterans Wall to confront everything that's going on, right? And you can quote that. And the speaker and the lost pilot is dealing with, and then, what's going on, and then how do they deal with it? So that would be that. That's just an option. And plug in any text you want, right? Song for a Dark Girl, The Flowers. Song for a Dark Girl, The Flowers throughout. Sonny's Blues, another thing would work really well. A paper. What poem and story does the piano work? Sonny's Blues, Sonny and the piano. The piano is a symbol for escape, a symbol for hope. In Tours, the little girl uses the piano as a symbol of hope and escape. So even though on the surface those 2 texts seemingly have nothing in common, they actually have a lot in common. So those are just a couple of options for paper 2. Walk through this, map out your paper. Hell, here's your outline right here. Just jam in whatever text you're using, and this is your outline for your paper, right? Look at the topics. So I think I have an older video with an outline for paper 2 as well. But again, as always, email me if you have any questions.